what we're going to address is the Christian American character. And the reason we do that is because that is the most effective platform for advancing and sustaining godliness, goodness, in the land of the living. Nothing else touches it. I'm going to take 4 areas, and you'll see it on your handout, the genesis of it, the identifiers of the American Christian character, the future of it, and the challenges that we face. First, the genesis. The Christian American character didn't just come into being in the few decades before or following 1776. What God did is he took a British rib and he planted that on a foreign soil. And he brought forth a nation, the only nation in the history of the world that has ever been founded on Christianity. No other one. And so what we do, your outline, Isaiah 51, we look to the rock from which we hewn, the quarry from which we were dug. And God took that rib and he created a character by and through conflict. Conflict is going to be the theme that runs through all of this. And I'm going to ask the person I love the most in the world, if she will, when I got 6 minutes to go, flag me so I'll find a runway. If you're averse to conflict, you're averse to Christianity. We are protesters. We're Protestants. Protestants protest. That creates conflict. All we've got to do is go along with the world. We don't have that problem. We see that conflict as early as the 13th century with the Magna Carta. Those barons forced King John to sign it. You follow it forward from the 13th century to the 18th century, and what you have is the most powerful empire in the world, and there's 13 adolescent colonies that they're going to take on the empire. Raw foolishness. There's no way they can win. Well, there's only one way they can win. And so what we do is we raise a flag that says, I appeal to heaven. You follow it through to the 21st century and 9/11, first war on our soil since the War of 1812. And then you move that 21st century into the panicked response to COVID and the refusal to address that conflict in a way that most benefit the nation and particularly our children. And that's who continues to suffer the most because their parents will not enter into the conflict. And so their parents don't build Christian character. Y'all, since Exodus 20:20, God has fulfilled his promise, I'm going to test you to see if you're faithful. You avoid the conflict, you avoid the test, you avoid being faithful. And you atrophy. And you ruin the Christian American character. Now, the identifiers of that character, I'm going to aggregate all the virtues under 3 virtues. Courage, integrity, and vision. Because this trifecta are the vanguards of the Christian American character. And so courage first. God says, be on the alert, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Now you couldn't write that today because the men there means men. And they could actually identify the difference in those days. Yeah, in the first century. Act like men. Courage holds all of the virtues hostage. Courage is a willingness to choose God's uncommon ways and means. Courage is a willingness to decide alone and to stand alone after you've decided. Writ large upon the canvas of human history are the names of those who possess what Alexander Solzhenitsyn called the courage to see. Because so few have it. Courage beggars the imagination of most people because they're unwilling to brave the storms of the conflicts that build Christian character. Y'all, there's no statute of limitations on cowardice. And what courage demands is sacrifice. And if you have not been to the morning worship service, you will hear about that sacrifice in the most blessed way this morning. Sacrifice, the Lord made it for us, and He calls on us to make it for those who come after us. That's the bona fide of the American Christian character. And if you look at Romans chapter 12, verse 1, you'll see it in its fullness. The first thing that the Christian character sacrifices is fear. That's the first sacrifice. Because fear is a fraud. It's a lie from the pit of hell. It decouples a man from his humanity. It's a disabler. On the wings of courage, a remnant, a very small remnant, hastens to the battleground where the fighting is the most fierce and the majority of Christians will not go. We don't have to deal with people outside the church. No, our problem is the people inside. Because when they leave the inside of the church is not still inside them. And they don't engage the conflict. The second standard is integrity. The apostle says, I'm already being poured out as a drink offering. The time of my departure has come. I fought the good fight. I finished the course. I've kept the faith. Integrity is the summum bonum, the highest good, and the terminus ad quem, and the goal of genuine Christians, of those who possess the character God wants us to possess. You think of illustrations of the integrity that the men throughout the ages have had. I have to go to one in particular. On December 23rd, 1783, at the State House in Annapolis, Maryland, the Continental Congress met. Thomas Mifflin was the president of the Congress. And a man appeared before them. He surrendered his sword and his commission as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. Stunning the international world. If you can imagine King George III, who was a monarch when we left that, when our people were engaged in that unpleasantness. There was only one man who could refuse to become King George the first of what would become the most indispensable nation in the history of the world. Well, how can you say in the history of the world? When the Romans conquered you, you became slaves. When we go in, we build people back up. We give them their territory back. Indispensable. How could George Washington do that? There's a quaint, no longer used term, because we no longer have it, but it was in vogue in the 17th and 18th century, and it was called disinterest. That means that the leader had a greater interest in those he led than he did in himself. That is John 10 and Philippians chapter 2. And that's what George Washington did. The graveyard of integrity is your own self-interest. That's what steals your integrity from you. The locus classicus of integrity is self-control, self-denial, self-discipline, self-possession, selflessness. Is everything but me. Samuel Adams said, while the people are virtuous, they cannot be subdued. But when once they lose their virtue, they shall soon forfeit their liberties. How close are we to that? What's it like to come face to face with a man who you can't buy, whose word you can genuinely trust, who when you go to divide up the money, you get the extra penny instead of him? How many folks can you trust to do that? What's he like when he roars a no that everyone can hear, but everyone else is whimpering yes and succumbing to the culture? Who is that man? Do you know that man? His character is unbreakable. He lives, Latin phrase is contra mundum, against the world. That's how he lives his life. During the 1765 Stamp Act crisis, Patrick Henry, you will remember, was inveighing against British taxation in the Virginia House of Burgesses. His own kinsmen were crying out, treason, treason. You remember what Mr. Henry said? If it be treason, make the most of it. He stuck both of his fingers in their eyes. Why? Because what they called treason, he called patriotism. They just had the wrong word. Why? Different ideology, different worldview. The third, vision. God says, where there is no vision, the people are unrestrained. Where there is no vision, the people perish. There are so few visions that can be captured by the majority of people because they're too significant. They're too expensive. You see, visionaries see what others fail, what others refuse to see, and it's right there in front of them. The rhetoric, the winsomeness and yet firmness of the visionaries, they bring forth an awareness of what's really going on around you because they see what other folks really don't see. They hear the trumpets of history past and history future, and they bring all of it into the present. The visionaries are the forerunners. They're the morning stars of the Christian American character. The vision focus of the Christian American character acknowledges the present intramural Cold War going on in America. But those with the Christian American character, they will not genuflect to the golden calves of national demise. And it saddens them when others do. You see, those possessing the Christian American character, they not only know how to get from Columbia to Washington, D.C., they know what to do when they get there. And they're unmoved by the length of time they're there. They end up the same people they were before because they possess that character. Now, what of the future? God says, I know the plans I have for you. We've read that 1,000 times. Plans for your welfare, not for calamity, to give you a future and a hope. The nature of the conflict that stiff arms Christian character, the nature of it never changes. The methodologies do. And that's why holding ground is not winning. That's what sanctification's all about. It's about increasing in the likeness of the Lord Jesus. That's where the Catholics missed it. They combined sanctification and justification. They just missed it. It explains all the mysteries that they... Anyway, that's for another time. During World War II, Belgium, Denmark, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and the list goes on. They professed neutrality, thinking that it would keep them out of the conflict. How'd that work for them? It worked for them the same way it works for you. When you avoid the conflict, all you do is scale it. All you do is ramp it up. Because conflict, it's going to come to the fore. Neutrality incentivizes evil. And what silence does is it scales that evil. Why does that happen? Because cowardice is always in vogue. You think you're going to have more courage tomorrow than you had yesterday? For some of my older friends, do you think you're going to have more energy tomorrow than you had yesterday? No. This is the best day of your life. You're not going to have any more energy than you have today. It's just not going to happen. You can dress like you're 32, but you're just not. And we're surrounded by it in the church. Managing evil is not a strategy. Mere defenders of already surrendered property, they're already defeated. No, God calls us to take back, not to back off. God and his history are both unkind to appeasers and temporizers, to those avoiding the conflict. Characterless Americans are substituting feelings for thinkings, ideology for truth, myths for history, opinions for facts, selfishness for selflessness. These characterless octopuses, what they do is they suck the Christian character out of the American mainstream. And they're so adept at it. These parasites and these pathogens, they need to be addressed, and they need to be decoupled from the national decision table. But first, they need to be decoupled from sitting on the sessions and the vestries and the whatever churches call their ruling bodies. Because if you're not going to get them off of there, you're sure not going to get them out of the American mainstream. Y'all, they're thieves. And these thieves arise in all kinds of different forms. But when you steal the Christian American character, that's far worse, more egregious than mere criminality. No. That is lethally treasonous. To the Lord first, then to the brethren, and then to the entire nation. These felonious aggressors, they lack the Christian American character. And so what do? They remove the memorials, the cultural artifacts to and of those possessing the American Christian character. Y'all, can you imagine if you could have Nathan Hale? I have but one life to give for my country. If you could have Nathan Hale standing right by you, when the Supreme Court renders an opinion, when the President of the United States provides an address to Congress, when political candidates line up against each other, when Nathan Hale, when you cancel street names and school names and the names of national monuments, and the list goes on and on and on. And Nathan Hale would say, whoa, 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 hold the phone. I gave my life for this. I gave my life for y'all. So you could be gutless cowards? How do you think the Founding Fathers would react? Preferred futures are determined by backbone choices, not spineless chances. Your future, the future of those you love, is determined by the decisions you make today. Now, for some of you, you are actually applying in your own life what I'm saying. Then there's another group of you that you're white-knuckling these chairs. I know what he's saying. I know how it applies, but I don't want any part of it. And there could be that small group of you, you just don't understand what I'm saying. I'm going to try to make it a little clearer. Let's address the challenge. Prophet Joel, chapter 3. God says, in most translations it says, prepare a war. The literal word is sanctify a war. Sanctify a war. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Evil is aggressive. Wickedness owns the box office. The mischiefs who lack Christian character, they're the rock stars. And where is the ecclesia? Radio silence. Radio silence. There's no pushback. Cowards. They're always short of breath. They consistently bury their talents. And they refuse conflict. The occasion really is right now to take the fight to those lacking Christian character. Now, we fight in a different way. 2 Corinthians chapter 10. We fight in a different way. But you take the fight to those lacking Christian character. And you do it with an operational intensity that will assure generational dividends. It's not casual. It's both strategic and it's tactical. And you combine the two of those. The Christian American character is the most critical infrastructure in this nation. Nothing touches it. Not a bridge, not a highway, not armaments. Because you exercise God's character, and He will do exceeding abundantly beyond all that you can ask or think. The eye is not seen, the ear is not heard, the mind is not conceived of all God has for those who love Him. You think He can't do it? Is the arm of the Lord too short? That's the vital. The truest monuments to the Christian American character are not found in stone. No. They're discovered in the stone walls who did not start this intramural Cold War, but we will finish it. And we will win. Why? Because if God be for us, who can be against us? He who did not fail to deliver up his own Son, will he not also with him freely give us all things? Is he going to withhold anything from his beloved? We are in the midst, from our side, of an Augustinian just war that's going to result in a preferred future for God's people. The battle is joined. Some are born to lead, but everyone is born to battle. Everyone. Well, I'm too old. Tell it to Moses. Well, when I wore a younger man's clothes, then you could what? You didn't do it then. Because if you did it then, we wouldn't be where we are now. That's the Queen's you. That's not one person individually. Yeah, but I'm just not fitted for that. Can you pray? Are you fitted to pray? In a church we belonged to years ago, one Sunday morning, the preacher called on one of the deacons, dear friend, cousin, to pray. This is in the 11 o'clock service. And my cousin and friend responded, I don't pray, in front of everybody. Well, at least there was one honest man in the congregation. I don't pray. Can you pray? Can you be one of those, my people? Called by my name? Humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways? What's the promise? And all of you can recite it. God says, I'm going to hear your prayer from heaven. I'm going to forgive your sin. And you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to clean your land. I'm going to cleanse it. It's going to be like Naaman's skin after he goes into Jordan. 7 times. Better than it was before. I'm going to make it better than it was before. That's the Lord's promise. The problem with it is that God's people don't really believe that God either can or will do what he promises he can do and that he desires to do. The American character, the Christian American character, it exists. Now, many of them are nominal Christians. We got that part. But it exists amongst the populace. It needs to be awakened. What does God say in Isaiah chapter 51 and 52? Awake, awake, rouse yourself. Well, it's not going to be awakened if God's people continue to say nothing. So many people, they must be given permission to be the people God's called them to be. You got to give them permission. People come to me all the time for advice. No, they really don't. What they come to me for is confirmation. It's the mirror on the wall, who's the prettiest of them all. And as long as the mirror says it's you, the mirror stays intact. But when you tell the wicked stepmother, it ain't you no more, sister, guess what happens? The mirror gets cracked. How about that? And they quit asking the questions. I talk with people all the time about their lives. Most of what I do, particularly with older friends, is I really do just confirm what they already know. I give them permission to do what they know is the right thing to do anyway. They need the permission. There's a remnant who does not, but most people do. They need the permission to enter into the conflict. And you, this is not the Queen's you, King's you, this is you. I'm speaking to you individually. you're the trigger. Christianity is in your DNA. It defines who you are. It's your canon. You're not merely having a romance with Jesus. You have a relationship. Our pastor this morning, he took us to John 3:16, but if you go up to John chapter 2, you look in verses 23 and 24, we're told many of those believed in Jesus because of his works. But Jesus didn't believe in them. Not till he gets to Nicodemus does Jesus trust Nicodemus with belief. They believed in his works, but they didn't believe in his person, in who he was, in his deity. The Christian American character possesses a strength in those who house that character. And God's the one who's given it to you. That you might know that your life, your children's liberty, and your grandchildren's Pax Americana is not going to exist unless you engage. Because all of that's tethered to your courage, your integrity, and your own vision. And again, you'd say, but who am I? Y'all, those who were mere mortals yesterday, they're the giants in the land today. Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, but who is adequate for these things? Your adequacy is never the issue. Never, never, never. If you're adequate, it's only when I'm weak that I'm strong. No, if you're adequate in yourself, you got the wrong stuff. You're fighting with the wrong weapons. The first thing you have to confess is, I don't have it. I can't do it. But there's one who can. But what he does is he does it through you. He just works through secondaries. Prime Minister Winston Churchill's mother was an American. So he was half American. Lord only knows what he'd done if his dad had been American too. In 1942, during the height of World War II, probably the leading journalist of the day was a man named Edward R. Murrow. And Mr. Murrow wrote of Prime Minister Churchill, he mobilized the English language and sent it into battle. Now, let that settle. He mobilized the English language and sent it into battle. I don't know about Mr. Churchill's Christianity. I do believe that what Edward R. Murrow said was true. But if that's true for him, who was half American, who was, President Kennedy did award him American citizenship in 1962 or 63. And he quoted Edward R. Murrow when he awarded that citizenship. Yeah. I don't remember whether President Kennedy gave Mr. Murrow credit for it or not, but he deployed it. The scabbard must be cast far from the verbal sword. We have the Word of Christ, and we can use the Word of Christ. You are part of a thought class. Why is that? Well, because 1 Corinthians 2:16, you have the mind of Christ. Y'all, there are people who are smarter than you. There are people who are more articulate than you. But there should not be anyone wiser than you. Why? Because you have the mind of Christ. You possess the ethos, the logos, the pathos of Aristotelian rhetoric. You can speak with measured words that flow from capacious and sagacious minds that impact people. You have no idea the impact you can have. You can gift verbal architecture to the Christian American character to the entire world. All the folks you can touch. You are the American character's Manhattan Project. You are. And you can antidote all the force multipliers of evil and the desire to take your nation down. Y'all, you live in a commonwealth you did not birth. You dwell in cities you did not build. You eat the fruit of vineyards you did not plant. You drink the water from wells that you did not dig, and I didn't make that up. That's the way you are in this world. Greece had her Alexander that Dr. Stewart referenced this morning. Rome had her Caesars. England, she had her Cromwell. The Christian American character, it has you. Yeah, but who am I compared to these people? Who are you in Christ Jesus? Who are you? Is any mountain too high or any river too wide for God's people? Conflict is the natural state of ordered liberty. In this natural state, you can rally a national consciousness. As the tour de force of the Christian American character, you occupy the city on a hill. No. You are the city on the hill. You are the city on the hill. You will not stand down. And I close. In 1831, Tocqueville said of the United States, it is a society that comprises all the nations of the world. That's what he said in 1831. If that was true in 1831, what is it today? God wants you to live so that those around you can march. It is no longer the season to withdraw behind the four walls. No. We need to leave the walls because we got territory we need to take. The prophet says, how awesome is this place, the glory of all lands. The Christian American character would proclaim, how often is this land and this people the glory of all lands, and you are the glory of all people.